Are we online? We will just wait for 2 minutes and then we'll go. Starting. Cool. So let's start. So hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar. I am Jagriti Pandey, co-founder of Design Jungle and a design coach and UX designer. I am very excited to welcome you to the second episode of the series that we are doing, where we are inviting product leaders and discussing everything about product design and technology. And today we have with us Jasjit Singh, who is an associate director dealer experience in platform monetization at OLX. He and his team is responsible for generating millions of dollars of revenue stream, traffic, and user monetization across markets like India, Indonesia, South Africa, and Pakistan. He comes with an extensive experience with emerging markets, and in past he has been the director of product management at MobiQuick and Wink. Deeply passionate about product and design, he is amongst one of the leading product leaders of India. And today he's here to share with us share with us the journey of how a UX designer can transition into product management. And before I welcome him, guys, just one quick thing that I wanted to share with you. Recently, there has been a lot of talk about mental health, and that is something that we have been always very vocal about. We've been talking about that. In fact, that is why we actually conducted two interviews with mental health experts, and I think it's very relevant now. It's a very common issue. Many people do not talk about it, but I highly encourage you, if you are somebody who think that you need some help, or if you know somebody who needs some help, please go to an expert, seek expert help. Help. There's no shame, and also check out these interviews that we did with two mental health experts. And if there is any way that you think the community can support, please let us know. With that, I would like to welcome Jasjit with us. Thank you so much, Jasjit, and over to you.
Hey, Jagriti. Thanks for the kind words. But also, I would really like to appreciate your effort in promoting mental health as a topic. Right? I think over years we've all neglected it, and this is the right time, especially given the COVID situation. This is the right time for everyone to focus on being healthy, not only physically but also mentally. Having said that, I think I will go over the presentation, and I would love to have more interactions. Like, I know digitally the interactions may not be as they would in a physical world, but feel free to ask questions, feel free to speak your mind, your thoughts, right, in the comments, and so that like we can take it up as we go forward. So that's
I think
how we would want to go. Yeah.
Actually, thank you, Hasdeep, for pointing that out. I think I forgot to mention that the this is going to there is going to be an AMA as well. So as soon as Jasdeep is done with his presentation, we would be taking up questions. So yes, please take your time and ask your questions. And yes, thank you so much. Yeah.
Cool. So now let's start the show. Uh, Cool. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, Jasjit, we can see your screen.
Cool. Cool. So again, this is a very, very interesting topic, right? It's about a journey. It's about a transformation from doing one thing to another thing, right? And that got me to think a lot in depth about like why would someone transition into this, right? What are the aspirations? Why? What are the different challenges that one would face, right? And and the last and the final question that came in my mind is, if I am a UX designer, why should I do this, right? Why should I take this journey? So I'll try to answer those questions, and it will be great to know your feedback as well as to why do you want to become a product manager in the first place if you are a UX designer, or are you still evaluating? So maybe if there are some thoughts on that, maybe that would be interesting if you could jot that down so that we can take them up later on. First, how do career transformations happen, right? So if you really look at it, it's a big leap of faith, right? It's a leap of faith that whatever you're doing now, you will be doing better, and if you'd make that transformation, right? But what happens is that there is like something that clicks and something that don't click for you. That depends on like if you're doing something that you really love doing, and you actually love it, and you actually are good at it, right? So it is an overlap of your capabilities and the passion that you have for that thing, right? So in my mind, how do career transformations happen? They happen as a leap of faith, where you're trying to figure out that what is it that you really love doing, right? And what is it that you are really good at doing, right? So that that passion can be transformed into something useful, that makes you more feel more good, more happy about it, right? And today I will be talking about some of the elements in this journey from a UX designer to a product designer, from a product manager to a product manager, where we can maybe influence that positive outcome, right? So we'll try and figure out, we'll ask ourselves more questions. We'll try and figure out that is it actually making sense for you, right? And maybe post this session, I would also want to encourage you to talk to me or talk to your mentors or folks out there to figure out that is it the right step, right? If you are in like, if you are thinking of making that transformation just because your boss sucks, right? Not the right thing to do, right? Bosses will change, managers will change, but is it something that really you are really passionate about? Is it something that you're really good at, right? If you feel that is the thing, if your gut says that, chances are you should make that transformation, right? So I'll take you through my journey. While I was preparing this presentation, I also thought about like what have I done over the years, so that like I can also tell you that how those transformations, how those pivots happened in my career. So I started off with pure technology, right? Did my BTech from YMCA, went into TCS's research lab. From there, went into Georgia Tech. Over there, that is where I learned more about usability, user experience. Back then, 2007, like it was a whole new world, right? Wherein we were still we were figuring out what does interactions mean, right? What are the gaps? What are the various methodologies, right? So it was a cross-functional team wherein you had psychology, design, architecture, computing, everything, right? That is where I learned a lot about. It's not just about the software; it is also about majorly about the interaction of that software with people, right? And the knowledge that I gained over there, I pivoted in BlackBerry into UX plus technology. So it was more in kind of doing my stuff, wherein over there itself, kind of validating, understanding the user, iterating on the product. And people back then called it innovation because there was no other word for it, right? So and then I wanted come back to India. Over there at that point of time, it was all a service industry, right? People didn't even understand me, right? I remember like I had to fight in an interview. I had to leave just because the other person, like, he couldn't even understand what does a HCI or UX mean, right? So that was the 2012 time. And fortunately, I got into few very good startups where I learned a lot about technology and product management. So you would see some patterns, right? So I'll talk about those patterns a little bit more further. But you see that there is always some kind of a pivot towards learning something new that kept me going, right? So, and after these startups, I joined OLX in 2016 into full-fledged product management. So I made that pivot in 2013-14, and from there I've been into product management. But that doesn't say that for the next 10 years I will be in the product management side. I might go into operations, I might go into business, right? So again, it's a life, it's my journey, right? It is my journey, and I am it's okay for me to fail, but it's more about learning. And in this journey, what made it very simple, or at least seem simple, is while I was in each of these journeys, I pivoted towards upgrading my skills, and and basically experimenting in my comfort zone. So again, I had my sandboxes, I had my mentors, I had my support system to ensure that whatever transformation that I am doing is making sense, right? And a lot of validation in each of these steps. So it for me also, I think this has been a learning career, and I would love to continue that. So now let's pivot to like understanding the main concepts of UX designer and a product manager, and see where those gaps are, right? And what are the various aspects in which these gaps could be addressed, right? So when you talk about a UX designer, who is a UX designer, right? So we always, like, now these days it's very common, right? You look for UX designers, you would have people coming up with profiles talking about interactions, talking about data, talking about designs, and all those things, right? So when we look deeper, why a UX designer is needed, I think the focus over there is primarily on interactions between a user and a system. A system could be product or services, right? And to understand that interaction, you are basically combining all the different things that are related to that interaction. It could be psychology, it could be business, it could be market, it could be design, technology. So in a way, you are already touching technology, you're already touching business, you're already touching a lot of psychology, right? So you're already there in that, in that realm, right, of understanding what the users want and how those interactions could be. And how does a UX designer solve these problems? So conducting user research, creating user personas, right? And also thinking about how would a person experience this journey, right? And in order to do that, you also create prototypes, you conduct user testing, and then evaluate, iterate on that, and until you think this is a product that is good enough to go into the market, and then you hand it over to the product manager or the technology leads to kind of see and work with them in this continued journeys wherein you are iterating as well as you move forward. And the last part is, what is the skill set that you need, right? So again, being a UX designer, you are conducting researches, you're designing experiences. So again, wireframing, prototyping, and analyzing data, analyzing business needs, right? And also empathy, right? That is something that is really core to being a UX designer. Do you have empathy with your user, right? And can you solve problems in a way that are outcome driven, right? So this is the whole framework of, in when I looked at it, this is a whole framework of how a UX designer operates as of now, right? So being very close to the interactions. And now comes the product manager, right? So I'll certainly start taking you through the gaps so that like we can appreciate and understand what changes, like the world, what in the world would change if a UX designer tomorrow changes his title to a product manager, right? So why a PM? So again, I think I have repeated this empty number many times, right? Like why do you need a product manager? So in case you had infinite problems and infinite resources, you don't need a product manager, because everything gets built, gets shipped, and some of it works well, some of it doesn't work well. The things that work well you get the output. The things that don't work well, you will close that, right? So in that case, there is no need of a product manager. But the problem comes that the effort in development, right, is the most effort intensive work, right? It takes a lot of time to develop that piece of code so that the application or the website things work, right? So for that to actually to for your organization to be more effective, you definitely want that piece wherein you have the maximum effort to be very optimized. And in order to optimize what gets built, you have a function of product manager who basically is looking at what are the right problems to solve, right? And can I order those problems in a way that makes sense to the end user? And then basis that, you look at solutions, you look at variants of solution, you talk to UX designers, right? Or even before, right, for finding problems also, you look at data, you look at UX designers. Okay, come on, can we do a research and find out what are the problems, right? And then over a period of time, you look at also solutions, you look at variants of solutions that solve a problem. And hence you look at prioritization. So prioritization also becomes very important. So instead of a task list, you are creating that task list, right? So again, think of it more in terms of ownership of the problem, right? uh, Fortunately, unfortunately, I think I'd rather say unfortunately, I think at least in the Indian ecosystem and similar markets, what we have seen is that teams are not that empowered, right? So again, someone somewhere decides, okay, these are the four things that we would do, and then the task list comes over to say a UX designer or even a product manager, right? So in empowered teams, what happens is that you are taking ownership of the objective of what you're trying to do. You figure out what are the right problems to solve, you prioritize those problems, and with the help of data, with the help of research, and then you look at like how do you solve that, right? And a lot of it is also about how do you get that information from the user into some kind of shape or form that the development teams can understand, right? So again, for a development team to work, they need to understand why they are doing, so they are motivated enough. Second, what they need to do so that in order to make that business impact. So again, it is more about what is the impact that you can generate with this, right? And then is how. So again, as I said, you start creating problem opportunity backlog, sizing the problem, measure and understanding the context of that problem, and then prioritize the bigger problems. Take one of the problems, look at like what are the variants of solutions that you would work with so that you can improve the product process and operations, and then validate the solution variants and then launch experiments and to understand more, right? It is more about uh, what gives you as a product manager more comfort in deciding that you want to go with a particular variant, or you want to go with the whole launch, or you want to do some more experiments. So again, the cost is the unknown that is there in that, right? Which has a direct impact on the outcome. And then it comes is what skills do you need. Of course, you need to be looking at data, right? You need to understand what are the matrices that you are trying to chase, right? And when you release that, what was the impact on that matrix? Did it move the needle, right? So the core thing is, did it move the needle, right? And then also looking at opportunity sizing, writing stories, narrating stories, influencing, right? So as you move from a PM to a senior PM to other like graduating into this product management thing, one thing that becomes central to your growth is how do you influence people, right? Can you understand what the other person is coming from, like what is his lens? Do you understand what you have from a product point of view, your story that you have? Can you understand what are the gaps, right? Can you influence them into understanding that your whatever you are thinking, or whatever is the thought process behind, like now that is where your validations come into the picture. Can you tell a story that people can relate to, right? So that is very important. In addition to that, you have adaptability. Again, now the empathy comes over here as well, and business knowledge of is becomes more important here, right? So what does that mean, right? So like there are some nuances that are different, but there are many nuances which are very similar to a UX designer, right? So while thinking about it, I went to this, right? So what changes, right? So in this is what changes, right? This is where your product manager operates. He is pulled or pushed by all the different forces in the ecosystem, right? But what, and to be honest, like this is a very balanced company which you are seeing over here, wherein UX, tech, and business have equal stakes, a very balanced company, right? But that doesn't happen usually, right? So for example, like in companies like VMware's, tech would be very heavy, right? In companies like Apple's, the UX will be very heavy as in like they're powerful stakeholders. In companies like Naukri and others, business would be very heavy, right? So again, what will happen is that the dynamics of the organization which will change with this Venn diagram, right? How the pull and push will happen, and basis that the play area of a product manager changes, right? So if you are operating in a business oriented company, you need to have a mindset of a business, but also validations that you can run from a product point of view. So again, this is where this would move towards the top, and you would be interacting or influencing less of a tech or a UX, but more of a business side and taking decisions over there. So it is more about taking decisions. In a tech oriented company, it's more about like what is the scale of operations, how do you make that happen. In a UX, it'll be more about like, can we create that experience that people really relate to, and can we create that experience that makes a lot of sense, right? So what will happen is that for a UX designer to make that change into a product manager, the easiest way is actually if you are in a company that values UX more, right? So you have your cushion around where you can now make this transition from here to here. So that's a cheat sheet of moving from a UX designer into a product manager by pivoting in a place where you are comfortable. Because the other thing is that no one wants to place your money on someone they don't know, right? So make that as an advantage to kind of leverage. So that's where, so this is what changes, right? Your pivot changes from someone who is focused more on UX to someone who is managing stakes with both UX, technology, and business, right? So that's what changes, and that also is different for different companies basis the pivot that the company has. So this is a very crowded slide, but I think when I was writing this, each and every word was something that I really like. Really thought through, right? So again, like when it comes to skill set, right? So again, it's very easy to say that can I do a 3 month or a 6 month or a 1 year course in product management and pivot, right? Very easy, right? But when you do that, right, like there are few elements that really make or break that experience, right? And basically I talked about the overlap between what you love and what you really want to do, right? So in that case, what I figured is that it's more about increasing exposure. So how do you increase exposure? You read a lot, right? You read a lot about what are other product managers doing, how are they managing the problems, how are they solving the problems, attend conferences. But also, like while you're interacting with them, your gut will also start speaking to you. This is something that you'll love, or this is something that, oh, this is like totally out of the world, right? So again, trust your gut. That really helps. The other part is, I think, from a UX designer to a product manager, the other very important aspect is how close can you get to data, right? So there are some basic things that you would want to understand, right? How do you measure, right? There are frameworks like R model, wherein you look at acquisition, activation, retention, and revenue. And for each of them, you have certain matrices, right? So if you want to acquire, the bounce rate should be low, or basically the retention of that particular channel should be high. Then you have activation, wherein you are looking at can how many times the user has done the core loops, right? Then you would also look at like an engagement. You would want the user to come back and perform those core loops again and again, and that happens when your DAO by MAU is high, right? So or your day 7 M1 M2 retention. So these are some of the things that are basics, right? So nothing no rocket science. All you need to understand is that can you read in data and draw inferences from that data so that you can guide decisions. So again, a lot of it is also empowered to take more decisions, right? In order to take more decisions, you need to understand the various perspectives, and those perspectives could be data, could be design, could be research. All those different things come into the picture, and can you learn from there and use that to take decisions, right? And decision making is something that helps you in prioritization. It helps you in saying this should be done, but very important aspect in product management is this should not be done, right? So a product manager should have a point of view that why you are doing what you are doing, and why you are not doing, because of what reasons they are. So again, that becomes very important. Now the central piece of also the skill that can make or break a product manager is curiosity, right? If you are not asking yourself often why, then the transition becomes even more difficult, because what will happen is then you are not the one who is taking the decision, right? There are others who are taking the decisions and you are executing it. So no one wants to write just simple stories, right? You want to be empowered to basically ask yourself the question why, and then you look at like what does it mean for that problem, right? So the more curious you are, if you are one of those very curious type, it is a natural home for you. But if you take assumptions or basically understand that okay, this is what was done in the past and maybe that works, or what this was done by XYZ company, I can just copy and live my day, and kind of make the things happen, then you are in for a shock, because more often than not those actually lead to failures, because your target audience, your problem statements are yours, right? They are, if someone else is solving, probably they are solving for their own needs, their own users. There may be overlap. In that case you may be lucky, but there chances are there may not be overlaps, right? So you need to pivot on your curiosity to make sure that you are asking yourself why more often, right? And the fourth is like it's also about a relationship, right? As a UX designer, I've seen teams, especially UX design teams, who basically like feel a part of a tribe of UX designers, but don't interact much with developers, right? So because like these are two different worlds. One is very logical, one is more artistic, abstract, right? So the conversations don't happen much, right? But that is somewhere I think when it comes to the transition, you need to understand different type of people. You need to understand where they are coming from, what is their context, how do they think, so that you are able to kind of tell them in their own language of why you are doing what you are doing, right? So that helps you with the story building, story narration, and helps you build relationships which you can use to be more successful, and basically gather feedback on things that are working for you, things that are not working for you, so that you can work on the things that you really need to move, if you want to become a product manager. And the last but not the least, I think I touched it as well earlier, is matrix, right? Why does it make sense for you to do such a thing? So the more you're closer to the matrices, the better chances for you to showcase results. The more you showcase results, the more confidence that people would have on you. Then comes the lens of comfort, right? So in my cases, I've seen that I was able to move from one into another career path when I was very comfortable with the organization I was in, when I was very comfortable with people who were backing me, right? So what I did was, in those organizations, I made sure that I become expendable. That is that I would basically make sure there is some other UX designer who is who is ready to take my place, who knows everything that they are doing. And basically in that way I can start contributing to the other role, and over a period of time work with my manager so that I move into the 100% role. So that is very crucial, that you have a buy-in from your own managers or the teams, so that they can help you in that transition and make sure that there are the chances for you to be successful are more, right? And in that lens also becomes very important is, does your organization support transition, right? If they support transitions, then it's good, right? Because what happens is that if you are a UX designer, all your life you have been a UX designer, and you go out to a company, right, and you say that I want to be a product manager, they'll probably not bet on you. Of course, like small startups where you don't get good product managers to start with, because of the constraints, over there you might get a chance, but pe- good organizations will not put the money on you, right? So that is where, wherever you are, look for opportunities to kind of grow your profile into a product over there. The third one is, I think, very, very crucial. I think we take it for granted and assume that a lot of this will happen by your own self. But do talk to a lot of product mentors, right? The feedback loop that you have with them will help you in course correcting. And to be honest, like, we are in a very VUCA kind of a world, right? It is chaos. It is chaos all through. And to give you that sanity, right, and to give you that support, that comfort, you need to have some kind of a product mentor to help you out and give you feedback that this is working well for you, this is not working well for you, do more of this, do less of this, right? So work with a product mentor so that this transition is as smooth as possible for you. And uh, and this is something that, like, the fourth point is something, when I was looking at, I think uh, we are very fortunate to live in a world where there are a lot of startups, right? And startups, as I said in the second point, right, startups would be people who would be willing to help you move that transition, right? That helps you gain more experience, that helps you also understand, is this the right fit for you? And also, like, I think a lot many times I've seen people, more successful people, are people who have side hustled, right? Like, they would they would do their day job, and they would, and then maybe do a stint or something on the product management side. So if you can do that, nothing like it. And so in terms of responsibility, I think so this is really important, right? Be ready for a thankless job. Because so what happens is that you are dealing with a lot of stakeholders, and the thing about stakeholders is, you cannot keep everyone happy, right? And if you are trying to do that, you're already screwed, because you are looking at compromises, you are looking at ways in which you can keep others happy, but from a product point of view, you are creating very bad experiences. So in that state, like, what changes over here? Whatever empathy that you had for the user, right, have that empathy into 10x. But for everyone else, you need to be someone who has a thick skin, right? So again, empathy with not only the users, empathy for you, that okay, there will be a 10, like, you will be flooded with all kind of feedback from all the things. Can you filter what makes sense? Can you filter what doesn't make sense? Can you look at data and come back and tell them, boss, what you said is making sense or it is not making sense, right? The second one is self awareness, right? Self awareness about what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. So the other day I was reading a blog, and a beautiful line was there. It said that great product managers are people who had one skill set in which they were very, very strong at. So almost all the transitions happened either from technology, UX design, or even business, right? So again, they were strong in one of these fields, they pivoted on that and then learned the other skill set, right? So that is how you could transition into and make it work for you. But for that, you should be very aware, what are the things that are strengths in you, what are the things that are weaknesses in you, right? And third is of course, like when you are making those changes, it is a high risk game. And in a high risk game, discipline and self management is something that can make or break that change, right? So I've seen people who moved into product, but one, they didn't get support. Second, they didn't maybe did a lot of stuff on building up the skill set, right? So if you are in it, be in it 100%. Otherwise, don't do it, right? Otherwise, you will be neither here nor there. So you want to avoid that situation wherein you are not disciplined enough to make that transition. And third, and the next one is about managing stakes, right? I think uh, as I told you, right, in that Venn diagram, now you are in the center of the world, right, center of the universe of your organization. So that also means that can you talk to cross-functional teams as much as possible, understand like what are their concerns, what are their thoughts, what are things that are working well for them, what are things that are not working well for them. Can you bridge those gaps? Can you understand? Can you make them can you convince them of your point of view or get convinced from their point of view, right? So again, it is more lot of interaction. So until now your interactions was with the user and the system, but now your interaction universe increases, wherein you're not only interacting with your user, and you're not only worried about the interaction of the user and and the system, but also within the system you are interacting with a lot of people to kind of make sense of what actually works for the end user, or what actually works for the organization and what doesn't, right? And this is what I would usually say, that in your mind you should also map all the stakeholders, right? So that you don't miss them out, right? You need to understand that this stakeholder, this is the role, this is what they want, this is what I have, what are the gaps, how do I fill that. And one thing I would say, that since this is a transition side, right, you are going out of your comfort zone. And whenever you go out of comfort zone, right, it is very easy to get negative and very easy to kind of bogged down by feedback, right? So always assume good intent, and that really helps you to kind of make even the negative experience into positive experience. You are here to learn, and if you are here to learn, there is no point of ego. There's no point of being someone who would you would have negative thoughts about, okay, this guy, this person did something, and hence like he doesn't like me, he doesn't want to work with me, and all those things. So assume good intent and over communicate. And what also works is that I think as a UX designer, you would have worked with a lot of people, right? So can you leverage all those relations in that transition? So again, make yourself as comfortable as possible in this uncomfortable zone, so that you are more successful. And always, like I think the fifth one is my favorite: under commit, over deliver. Go in for surprises, right? People love surprises. Be it the users, be it our stakeholders, we all love surprises. Can you do that? So this is where I would kind of end and maybe open up more of questions. So again, like just to wrap everything back together, I think it is a function of mind, right? It is your thoughts or your intent that can make help you decide that you want to be a product manager or a UX designer. None of it, like it's not that product UX designers are not good, right? Or product manager is the next thing to do. I think both of them have their own merits, and both of them have their own positives and negatives, right? So it's all in your mind, right? Is it something that will work for you? Is it something that you love doing, right? So make those calls basis that. And the key elements of this is, are you curious, right? Are you comfortable in chaos, and are you ready for a thankless job, right? And last is, can you manage the complexity of relationships? And if you are, then, and your gut says yes, this is something that I would love to do, I think you are already ready. All you need is the right opportunity. Look for those opportunities and make that transition. Else, I think UX designer, being a UX designer is an amazing job in itself. And that is where I think you can grow, you can bring a lot of impact as well. So yeah, that was it from my side.
Thank you so much, Jasjit. It was wonderful listening to your presentation as always. So I will start taking up the questions from the audience, and I'll recommend audience to start writing more questions. But I have a question for you. So for our audience, can you please explain what does a typical day look like? Like, what is a typical day for a product manager? Like, let's say you enter the office, I mean, virtually these days. But what is it that you typically do in a day? How does your day look like?
So how to answer that question, it is as similar to sitting on a frying pan.
Okay, frying pan. Okay, nice.
So again, like one, I think more often than not, I think we are trying to understand the problems, right? And while understanding the problems, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of stakes that need to be managed. So again, so the biggest thing is that can you find the right problems, and then can you find the right solutions. So in a typical day, you would interact with, say, UX, your designers, you would interact with your business stakeholders, you would interact with your tech team, you would interact with almost everyone, trying to convince them that this is something that actually makes sense, trying to convince them that this is what needs to be done, and trying to convince them that these are the matrices that we are trying to chase. Let's make it happen, right? So you organically become a leader who is shepherding everyone to kind of do the right thing for the user.
Right.
So
Got
that translates to sitting on a frying pan.
it. So what has been like your because of course you transitioned from a place where in fact when you were UX designer, even that time people did not understand what UX design is, and then you took another leap. So what has been like your biggest challenge so far, and how did you like overcame it? What has been the biggest challenge for you?
No, I think my biggest challenges have always been around uh, the blind spots, right? Wherein, like, what are my blind spots? How do I remove those blind spots? How do I gather feedback? How do I improve on it? So whatever happens, like, I think when you are in that zone, right, you look from a particular perspective. But when you change perspectives, you are still looking at that from that angle, right? And that is where it breaks the whole experience. So you need to be very open for feedback so that you can cover up those blind spots from different perspectives.
Interesting. So we have some pretty interesting question, and I think there's one question which would kind of transition into like which is an expansion of what you just mentioned. So this one is by Shubham, and he says that how do we switch context between tunnel vision, which is day-to-day product ops, and long-term vision, which is product and business strategy? This is a nice question, and I think this you would be able to expand upon what you just said. So
Sure.
yeah,
Sure. So I think more often than not, so the nuance in this question itself, first of all, like, really beautiful question, because what happens is that we as product managers get stuck into the day to day activities, right? And these are sometimes very overwhelming. So what I typically tell my product team is that whenever you're thinking of a day to day, even a small mundane task, right, of maybe placing a button, right,
yeah,
think at that point of time, what how will this grow into something that can impact a lot of more users, right? So even the small nuances, when you start thinking in terms of where do you want to take it into the future, then in that case it becomes a part of the habit. And this is where you need to break that habit of being stuck into today, but also thinking about future. So even small things, can you think in terms of how will the user interact in the future? How what does this impact in the overall journey? How will this journey evolve into? So I think the basic start, it starts with the why, right? It starts with what is that need, right? Can you decipher that need? Once you decipher the need, what is that short term thing that you're doing now? what what is that longer term thing that you should be doing in the future, so that you create a some kind of a vision roadmap for you. So for example, like maybe a need, I could give an example, like so for example, Zomato, right? And the need for the user is to order food, or he wants to eat, right, without cooking. So that is, your need is independent of whatever technology or product space that you have. The user need is that I want to cook, I want to eat food without cooking, right? And then, like, if you are placing that button of, say, uh, ordering in Zomato, right? So that's a simple button, right? You can go around beating around the bush of that button, right? Should this color be red, should this be green, or things like that. But also you can think about what are the journeys that it could have in the future, right?
Hmm.
Today it could be just like ordering and people coming and delivering things, but can there be something else, right? Can there be some other mechanism in which that food could reach that particular user, right? So again, maybe there is someone near your area who is actually like really good in cooking, right? People appreciate that. Can she deliver you, right? Can you change the business model? So again, even a small thing can have a big impact if you start thinking about why, and that is how you kind of look at problems.
This is very interesting. So, you work with, of course, you work with techies and you work with designers. So this is something that happens quite a lot. That designers are usually very like they're perfectionists and they want to get the things right to the T. And sometimes the goal is to ship. And like every time you cannot be using your leader card on them and then getting the things done. How do you then like negotiate these trade-offs? How do you tell them that, hey, this time let's do this, maybe this is for better? Like, how do you set up those sort of relationships where people are not listening to you because they're intimidated by you as a leader, or they are doing it because genuinely they have a trust? So like, how do you set up those sort of, I would say, invisible and still the visible communication channels? How do you set up those?
So I think the biggest problem, why, so again, like, ask yourself why is it happening, right? If you ask yourself why is it happening, because we operate in a very time bound fashion, right? Here
Mm.
this release needs to go out, and hence this is important, and we are fighting our lives over it, right?
Uh,
But if you change this frame of reference into an infinite frame, we are here for infinity and we are here in this together.
hmm.
Now let's look at what is it that we should be doing now so that we learn more. What should be doing in the medium term, what should be doing in the longer term. So it's the basic problem is about perspective. Can you change the frame of reference from a time bound fashion into an infinite one? And that changes the game completely.
That's amazing. That's an amazing feedback. Thanks for that. So, Suyash has a question and he asks that just want to know the difference between product manager and product owner in terms of their KRA and KPIs. It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
So,
So so the answer is that it depends, right? It depends on the organization. It depends on the processes. It depends on how product is perceived by that organization. So in some organizations, it is used interchangeably. Like, a product manager is also a product owner, right? And in some organizations, you have product owners who run sprints, and you have a product manager who is looking at the product vision, strategy, and also the product roadmap. So again, basis the definition of what you are doing, you would basically change you would measure it accordingly. But in terms of KRAs or KPIs, I think those are a function of what you're trying to achieve, and not, if you are a product manager and a product owner, your KPIs or KRAs may be different. So at the end of the day, everyone wants successful products, and either you are learning or you are launching something that makes sense, right? So in those point of view, those KRA KPIs would be pivoted towards the outcome. I hope that answers the question.
all right. Just one thing to extend to that. So, just say this is one thing that there are sometimes people are actually taking up the PM role. Like there are small teams where somebody is actually the PM and they may not have like the designation of a PM, but anyways they are taking up that role. So in that context, would you say it's more about the mindset, not
Yes.
so much about the designation? Because some people are actually doing that role. So my question is that, let's say if somebody, let's say I am like I am working as an entrepreneur and sometimes I am taking up this role
Yes.
of PM. I don't have a designated PM. So let's say now I go in the company and I start applying as a product manager or maybe something in a product management role, maybe leadership, whatever. How do I then collect that experience and show that I have the expertise? Like, what does the portfolio of a PM looks like?
So again, like whatever PM interviews I have had a chance to either interview or interview. So either that, right? One of the things that comes a lot is about how do you look at problems, right? How do you look at different perspectives of a problem? Can you reframe problems? Can you focus on what is your target audience? Can you look at matrices? Can you have that conversation, right? So
Wow.
if you are a good storyteller who knows about this, right, you will be through. Of course, there are companies there are companies who would basically say that I want a product manager experience of 5 years, 3 years,
Mhm.
right? Those are like over there, like it's more of an organization call that what they want. But as a product manager, at least if you interview with me, that's what I would look, and that's where I would also say, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense.
Very encouraging, I must say. So the next question, yeah, this is something that I also wanted to ask. Imran asked that I observed that without dev or engineering experience, it is very tough to handle devs or engineers. So as a pure UX designer, how can we fill the gap of the above mentioned skills to become an effective PM?
So the answer to that is your curiosity will lead you to it, right? So if you are curious enough, right, to have an intelligent conversation with the developer, all you need to understand is like maybe have some conversations, like talk to them. And that is where you will learn a lot about what they think, how they scale, what are their problems, what are their issues. So can you consider them as your users and understand their day in life, right? That is good enough. So again, like, it's more about relationship building, right? It's not about you need to write code to be able to influence them, right? So you need to understand their perspectives, right? So there are certain constraints in their platform. Can you understand that constraint? Can you also relate to those constraints, and maybe even your UX designs reflect that, right? So again, it's more about conversations, it's more about relationship building, which I feel oftentimes, like, we in our own heads think about, like, yeah, he is a developer, he might, like, whatever he says is gibberish, that doesn't
uh,
make sense for me, it is better that I stay away, right? So that is a mindset that probably we will have to cross over, and just being curious about what does Java mean, what does C++ mean, how does it all work, right? That curiosity will guide you.
right.
So
So
again,
yeah,
like, bottom line, build relationships.
that's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so this is an interesting question. Is always asked. Actually, it's always asked in all the AMAs. What does empathy means? It's an interesting one.
Empathy in my mind is understanding, right? Understanding the different perspectives of that particular thing, right? So if you're being empathetic about a user, can you understand his problems? Can you understand what he's going through? Can you understand where is he stuck? Can you understand how will he go for further, right? Can you understand how will he go to the next stage? So I think if you are able to understand perspective of who your user is, what is he doing, who your stakeholder is, what he wants, what is happening over there. So again, oftentimes I think it becomes me versus you, right? Can we stay away from me versus you to
Right.
something that can we build on each other, right? So again, like, typical conversations with me are, I totally understand your perspective, I understand where you're coming from because this is what you want, right? But also I would want to push you to understand, like, what other things are there which you have not considered. Let's talk about that. All of a sudden, that me versus you gets into more of a constructive discussion about, yeah, then the other person also understand that, yeah, one, the other person is, he acknowledges my point of view, and he's adding to his point, adding to this perspective with his point of view, and it is a win-win. So again, empathy is more about understanding whoever is your stakeholder or a user.
Interesting. Um, so this is a question by Nandini, but I think it may be related to a particular slide that you asked. So she's asking about the metrics. And are they different for enterprise products? So maybe what she wants to ask is it are they different for B2B versus B2C, and about metrics? Yeah.
So again I would ask why are so of course they are different, but why? In a consumer product, like, you have millions of users, right? You have a lot of traffic that is coming in, right? And there are few things that you are measuring to be able to know that is it work going in the right direction or wrong direction, right? When it comes to enterprises, usually there are very less number of users who are using it, right? So at the end of the thing, there are two lenses to it. First lens tells you about what is the outcome that you are trying to achieve. So that is same on both enterprise and consumer products, because this is what you want to deliver at the end of the day, and hence those matrices may make sense over here. But also, like, in order to iterate further, what is it that you need to know on the consumer side, what is it that you need to know on the enterprise side, so that you can take decisions. So on the consumer side, it is more about DAO by MAO and all those matrices which are built on volume. But on enterprise level, it will be more about qualitative feedback, that CSATs and things like that, so that, like, are you getting that feedback from your enterprise customers, that is it working for them,
Yeah.
right? So that is where it changes, but overall it depends on, like, it is a function of what outcome that you are trying to achieve.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so this is a question from Rohit. So I think what he wants to ask is the difference between product designer and a UX designer. Yeah, so this is coming up these days a lot. So what do you think about that?
I would ask you, right? You are a better person on this.
Yeah, so I think
What do you say?
yeah, so I think it's a change of mindset. So basically, like, earlier when we used to be UX designers, so let's say we've designed a product and then designers used to drop the ball, that we've done our job, it's finished and we're done. So product designer again is like in a company, in an organization where you are taking up responsibility for the product through and through. So you are not just confined to a role of just I am the designer and this is it, this is what I'll do, I'm only responsible for the design. But you are actually thinking that what if how is it that the sales folks in my company are going to sell this product, how is it that the marketing guys are going to market it, let me look at the data and what is data saying. So it's like not dropping the ball and actually being like designing a product, not just the interface, like when you talk about product, it's end to end throughout. So you are taking responsibility. So I think it's more, again, it's a lot about the mindset, that if you say that you're a product designer. And I think the other perspective again is also that it's like if you are working in services, so that is like you're building products for somebody else. So yes, you are only designing the UX, you're responsible for the UX bit. But if you are building a product for a company, like let's say for OLX, you guys are building a product, so then you are a product designer who's responsible for through and through. So yeah, I think I have an expert sitting here and I'm answering. So I hope I did good, Jasjit.
No, you did really well, right? I think that underlines it, right? Experience.
Yeah,
Is it about ownership of the experience, or is it about ownership of a certain part, right?
yeah,
It's all in the mindset. Okay.
yeah.
Very well answered. Good job.
Thank thank you. Okay. So, yeah, this is an interesting one by Shubham. He asked that how do you enable or facilitate trade-offs between design and tech teams, as that's one of the most challenging meetings to be in.
Yes.
Yeah,
So I think the best way to handle this is think about the user, place him in the center, right? And then your conversations are very simple, right? Like, does it make sense for this user? If it makes sense, let's make it happen, right? We are one team. Let's make it happen. Whatever makes sense for our users. So in that case, all the trade-offs from design technology, like if you are building a so again, typical perspectives is that from a design side, you would typically say that I want to build the best experience. From a technology side, you would say no, like this can't be done right now. Let's do this and then see what it is. From a product angle, you would say that what is it that with which you can learn more, right? So that you know more, and hence you can take educated calls towards in that particular direction, for that helps our user in a certain way. So that is where then your conversations become totally different.
Yeah. Jasjit, I am well aware that OLX has one of the best research teams actually. I'm well aware of that because we have had an opportunity to sit with you guys and understand how it works. But let's say if there's a smaller team where, maybe it's like a pod, as you say, like maybe there are just two devs, one front end, one back end, and then there's a UX designer, there's no PM. And then this is the same situation, right? And you don't have the data as well, and maybe you don't have the resources to even do the research, like thorough research. Then how would you handle the same? That how do you like enable these trade-offs?
See again, what 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 guides your decision into product is validations, right? So again, you should not always think in terms of very costly ways of validating things, but there are always ways in which you can think about how can you make it cheaper, right? How do you make your experiments cheaper? It can be a simple trapdoor experiment wherein you are putting a button and saying that things are coming soon, right? So those kind of things that you can actually with. So again, it depends, right? If you are in that state, you probably have less users. Can you pick up a phone and talk to them, right? Can like ask them feedback about like what worked, what didn't work, or maybe talk to them that can we come and sit with you to understand how are you using the product and things like that. So again, the core is validation,
Right.
and in those scenarios it becomes even more important how can you reduce the cost to experiment.
Got it. Amazing. Um. Okay. What? Okay. This is a question which is extension to the research. What type of customer or user research do PMs conduct and when?
So
This is
it's a sorry.
This is by Parveen, yeah. So he,
Okay. So, Praveen, I think what usually happens is it is a function of problem, right? Some problems need more research in understanding the nuances of that particular problem. Some problems need more validation to ensure that you are going in that right direction, right? So again, typically you would have a problem opportunity backlog in which you would prioritize the problems basis the problem size, and for understanding the problem size you would either look at data or you would talk to customers to kind of understand where in their daily life this particular things reside, what is the value of this particular thing in this whole life in his day, and then build on top of it, right? So that is you would typically do in the research part. Once you have understood your problems and prioritize them better, then in that case you look at what are the variants of solutions that are there, and you look at like how do you design experiments out of it, right? What makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and typically you would do usability testing there and kind of understand that are you solving the right problem with the right solution, or is it that this is not in line with what the user expected. So that is where this would work.
okay, this is just a minute. Okay, so this is by Love. He's asking who is the right person to have the conversation about you wanting to transition into the PM role. Should it be your immediate manager or another existing PM in the company? It's a nice question. So, what do you have to say, Jasjit?
So my answer to this is very simple: both of them, right?
Okay.
Because one you would definitely want to keep your manager updated on your progress, right? And hence he can also help you out in that transition. But you also want to know where you are landing up, right? So in order to do that, you should be mostly also also talking to a lot of product managers or existing PM or a PM lead or the CPO, so that someone can also take like groom you in that process on the other side. So this is like both the things are there wherein someone is taking you to the next step and someone is taking you the other side, right? So that is a very comfortable position for you, a sandbox wherein you can do a lot of experiments and explore.
Yeah, so this is pretty interesting. Just this question I'm asking because since we've been running the community, many a times there are a lot of people who are techies and they want to transition into UX role, and this is a very common scenario.
Yeah.
And my advice normally to them is that why don't you talk to somebody who is like somebody who is in design? Why
Yeah.
don't you talk to a PM? Why don't you talk to somebody who may get you and groom you into that role? Why don't you talk to them? And I don't know, sometimes it's like maybe they've not thought of it, and then sometimes there is this impression that how can I do that? So I want to understand that, is it like that difficult? Like, can you not approach people inside the company? Is it like that with all the company, or is there a way for you to approach people from different domains who may be in a different vertical, but they are still a part of your company, right? So how do you do that?
So in my mind, it is a function of the fire in the gut, right? So how passionate about are you about it? If you're really serious, if you're really passionate, nothing stops you, right? I have seen that nothing stops. So then in that case, you are more open to conversations. You're more open to kind of gather feedback. Maybe you should even talk to your HR as well, right? So like, is there a company policy around it so that you're not uh, rubbing it on the wrong way, right? So again, make sure that again, like the idea over there is, can you be very comfortable in that transition? So your HR VP or your the current team, the product team, if you are talking to them, then it becomes very easy. And hence, like what I would say is that the presentation that I went through, right? Just go over it again, right? And answer the question for yourself. Is that something you would want to do? If you're really interested, really passionate, right? Carve out a way in which you are talking to stakeholders, right? Again, if people don't see passion in you, then they basically say no, right? If they see passion in you, they will support you, right? So that is where it all comes down to.
Great. I mean, that's a very good feedback also, because when people are backing you up, it's also their reputation on the
Yes.
line. So
Yes.
they would only back you up if they see that it's worth it, right? So that's a very good thing that you mentioned. So this question is by Gui Korte. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I don't want to become a PM. I still want to be a product designer, but more skilled. How can I collaborate better with my PM? That's an interesting one. So, how can a designer be a good designer with respect to their communication with the PMs?
So again, where a healthy relationship between a product designer and a product manager is the one in which we are pushing each other, right? In which we are asking questions about why are we doing this, for whom are we doing this, what is the end impact of it, right? Can we figure out more about, like, is this the right target audience? How do we validate that this is there, right? And then when you are in that thick of actions, right, you also start contributing more from a design point of view as well, right? So there, otherwise what will happen is, sometimes it will happen that product manager has already some thought or a vision of where he wants to take it. He'll talk to you, you basically close your mind and then execute it. And after some time you feel that I am not empowering, it is not empowering for me to be a designer, right? So you don't want to be in that situation. And for you to be more empowered, you need to contribute, and for that to happen, you need to understand why we are doing what we are doing, and can you use that experience from your past to kind of also influence the product manager that maybe these are the other things that we could try out,
Hmm.
validate, and then enhance the experience for the user.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it's like nobody's stopping you from doing the right thing.
Yes.
You just have to sometimes do things without permission. Of course, in a way that doesn't offend anybody, but yeah. Naman has a question. He asked that what tools should we use to maintain the track of different tasks which are being done? And just below that he has written, other than Trello board. So other than Trello board, what tools should we use to maintain the track of different tasks?
So I think Trello board itself is a good example, but like different organizations have different tools. Some use swim lanes and Jira to kind of manage the interactions or the tasks that are there. We basically have problem opportunity, we have initiatives, we have epics, and then those epics get into the different swim lanes of people, and that gives visibility to everyone. So, but yeah, I think more important is the communication. I think the channel of communication is something that I would maybe leave to the organizations to kind of figure out what works best for there, because it is also a function of the size of the teams, the location of the teams. Are they co-located? Are they different places? Are they like 10-member team or a 100-member team? So a lot of that would also depend on the kind of tools that people use.
Okay. Right. There is another question. It is around is so he's asking that what is the difference between project manager and product manager?
So,
If
yeah,
so,
you're
if they are
saying.
different in OLX, and what is the difference between the two?
So we don't have project managers as of now. So I think there were some talks about having a project manager for some of the complex projects, but that never happened. A project manager is basically someone who is. It's again, it's all about ownership of outcome, right? A project manager is delivering what has been asked for him to deliver, whereas a product manager is figuring out a way to see what are the things that need to be done to make it happen. So that's the key difference.
Got it. Okay, so this is from Deepak. He's asking, just want to know, are there any books that could be helpful in making a roadmap for transition into a good PM?
Um, so I think when you talk about roadmap, right, or it is also like so off the mind right now. I don't remember something, but what will definitely help you is prioritizing basis the problem sizing, and then you also look at where do you want, what is your product vision, right? What is it, what is the needs that you are trying to solve, and what are the needs that are currently solved, what are the needs that will be solved in the future, right? And can you sequence it in a way that makes sense for the user as he transitions into that particular product. So I think that is something that helps you design roadmaps. On the books part, I can get back to you.
Great. So I think you can send us the names and we would share it with the community. That's
Sure,
awesome.
sure.
Uh, Chetan is asking, how do you improve your self awareness, principles, and tools? I think this is with regards to your second last slide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think now you will say that I have transitioned into a Baba, but but to be honest, I think how do you improve your self awareness is being present in the moment, right? Can you be here, right now, solving the problems that are currently there in life, and not only on work wise but also on the personal front? Can you be in the moment? And that moment itself, you get to realize a lot about yourself. What are the things that work for you, what are the things that don't work for you? So the more open you are with feedback, more open you are with understanding yourself more, the better it is for you to kind of move forward. And in terms of product, I think self awareness in terms of what is your thought process, right? How do you think? Do you think of solution first? Do you think about problems? Do you think about target audience? Do you think about segments? So those are the things that you should be self-aware, right? Consciously you should be thinking about why are you solving a problem, for whom are you solving the problem, how big is that problem, can you is that when you solve that problem, will it add any value to your customers or the users? So those are the conscious things that you should be thinking about while doing that. And the starting point is why.
Right. Um, I think I'll take just few of the last questions now. Um, Somebody has asked you about the certifications. Are there any certifications for the PM role?
No, so there are. So I think there are lot many certifications that are there, but so it's more like a guided tour, right? So you when you go to say the Europes of the world, and you take a 15-day or a 7-day trip, right? What do you do, right? You see all the places, click photographs, come back, right? Day in, day out, you do that. But does that mean that you know Paris or Rome really well, or are you really comfortable in it? So again, the certification, whatever certifications are there, I think almost everything is good. But we make sure that what you're doing over there, you self-analyze what are your core strengths in those areas, what are your weaknesses, so that you can go back and read more about it. So I wouldn't. There are many certifications. Maybe on that also I can come back. But to be honest, like it's you can take anything, but make sure that at that point in time you understand where you want to go deeper, and then work on that.
Great. So, Jasjit, I think this is a question that I asked before, but it is an extension to this question. So, let's say when you started in your first job as in product management, and you were transitioning. So, at that time, like, how did you go? Like, what did you tell those people that, hey, I can do this role, and how did you like sort of presented an evidence that you can do it? Like, what is it that was there in as your ammunition? What did you have?
So mine is a very interesting story. So what is happening was that I was in the technology, like I was an architect kind of a role at that point in time, and my product manager was leaving, so he was leaving. So I
Oh,
used that opportunity. I told him, boss, this is something that I think I can do well, and he said yes, because you're already asking a lot of questions, you're already into the frame, and yes, that makes sense. So then I said, let's talk to other people and see what people feel. And we talked to different people in the management, and people were fine. They said okay. For them, they didn't have to hire a new product manager,
yes, yes.
and they felt that he could also take care of technology. So sorted, one less person required additionally. So I used that card. That was like, I can do both. I'll make sure that both of the things are sorted, so you don't worry about anything. And hence I became from a software architect into a technical product manager.
Wow. I think the beauty of this story is in the fact that, of course, this wouldn't have happened if you did not have those sort of relationships in place. So it kind
Yeah.
of shows that how imperative it is to have these relationships in place, and
Yes.
you never know when somebody might be quitting their job and handing
Yes.
it over to you. It's pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely, absolutely. It's all about, like, I think, one, managing that relationship. Second, standing up at the right moment with the with your story. I think you should have a story that people can believe in.
Amazing, amazing. So I think this was my last question. Just before I hand it over to Rohan, I just want to know, Jasdeep, that what are the good channels to reach out to you? Let's say if somebody wants to, how can they connect?
So I think LinkedIn is the best way. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, and then basically, basis conversation, we can take that forward anywhere I can help. Yeah, so I think that's the best way to kind of engage with me. I'm pretty active there.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jasdeep. I am inviting Rohan. So Rohan is the organizer for Product Sundays, which we are, so Design Jungle and Product Sundays are together doing these interviews. So I am getting him in. And thank you so much, Jasdeep. And
Thank
over
you.
to you, Rohan.
Hey guys, well, that was an interesting session. So I hope you all learned something new like I did. Thank you so much, Jasjit, for your journey and the experiences over the year. This session was organized by Design Jungle and Design Sundays. Do check us out on meetup.com. We'll be back with our next session on 4th of July with another very special guest, uh, Gagan Sani. He is the Director of User Experience at PayU, who explains design as marriage. Amazing, right? So we'll see you there. Till then, keep yourself and your family safe and healthy. Thank you so much, and see you on 4th.
Thanks, guys.